On a quiet suburban street, where fear and distrust silently reigned, two wounded souls were about to discover the transformative power of compassion. A garbage man tormented by past traumas and a golden retriever marked by abandonment didn't know that their lives were about to intertwine in an extraordinary way. This is the story of how a simple act of courage broke the chains of fear, proving that sometimes our greatest weaknesses can become the source of our deepest strength. Tom woke up every morning at 4 a.m., getting ready for another day of work. While wearing his dark green uniform, he mentally rehearsed his route, remembering every house with a dog. His morning ritual included a moment of deep breathing, an attempt to calm the nerves that inevitably flared up. The incident from his childhood, when he was attacked by an out-of-control German shepherd, remained vivid in his memory. The scar on his right leg was a constant reminder of that terrible day. Twice a week, on Tuesdays and Fridays, Tom and Shelby's stories intersected in front of the Byrne house, a beautiful two-story colonial residence painted pale blue. The ritual was always the same. Shelby, standing in the well-kept garden, barked fiercely while Tom, with quick and precise movements, emptied the trash cans. Their eyes never met, each trapped in their own bubble of apprehension. For Tom, every home with a dog was a challenge to overcome, a test of his courage. He was proud that he never missed a day of work due to his fear, but the emotional cost was high. Bad nights and constant anxiety were the price he paid for his determination. Shelby, for her part, had known the worst of humanity before finding her home with Joshua Byrne, a young literature professor. The animal shelter he came from was just the last stop on a journey marked by abandonment and mistreatment. Her first owners neglected her, leaving her tied up in the yard without adequate food or shelter. When she was rescued, she was malnourished and scared. Joshua adopted Shelby after months of visits to the shelter, slowly gaining her trust. At home, he discovered that Shelby's barking was not anger, but a desperate cry of self-preservation. Every loud sound, every sudden movement, made her retreat into a corner, trembling. Week after week, month after month, this ballet of fear and distrust was repeated in front of the Byrne home. Tom arrived, his body tense and rigid, moving with the efficiency of someone who wants to finish an unpleasant task as quickly as possible. Shelby, upon hearing the noise of the garbage truck, would run into the garden, her golden fur shining in the morning sun, and begin her routine of fierce barking. Neighbors watched this scene with a mixture of compassion and curiosity. Some speculated about the garbage man's past, others about Shelby's behavior. Joshua, watching from his window, felt a pang of sadness every time he saw the fear in Tom's eyes and Shelby's agitation. As the seasons changed, from summer to fall, and then to winter, it seemed like this pattern was destined to continue indefinitely. Two wounded souls, each struggling with their own demons, unable to see beyond their own traumatic experiences. But fate, as often happens, had other plans for Tom and Shelby. One sunny spring morning, when the air was thick with the scent of newly bloomed flowers and the dew was still glistening on the grass, Tom arrived as usual at the Byrne house. The garbage truck rumbled softly as he parked it, its movements automatic after years of routine. But something was different that day. Shelby was there, as always, but her posture was different. His barking, once fierce and incessant, was now just a hesitant murmur. She was sitting on the grass, her tail curled around her paws, her eyes fixed on Tom with a curiosity that replaced her usual fear. Tom, noticing the change, felt a wave of surprise that momentarily overcame his deep-seated fear. For the first time, he allowed himself to truly look at Shelby. What he saw was not a threatening beast, but an animal as scared as himself. In those amber eyes, he recognized a reflection of his own wounded soul. At that moment, something broke inside Tom. Maybe it was the recognition of a kindred spirit, or maybe it was simply the weariness of carrying so much fear for so many years. With his heart pounding, he made a decision that would change everything. Slowly, with a shaking hand, he reached toward Shelby. Time seemed to freeze. The birds silenced their morning songs. The leaves stopped rustling in the wind. Shelby looked at the outstretched hand, then at Tom's face. There was a silent question in her brown eyes, a mix of fear and hope that Tom knew all too well. Slowly, cautiously, Shelby stood up. Every step she took towards Tom seemed to echo in the silence of the morning. When he finally got close enough, she craned her neck and nuzzled his hand. That simple touch was like a spark, igniting a light where there was only darkness before. Tom felt tears in his eyes, not from fear, but from an emotion he couldn't name. It was as if years of tension were melting away in that single moment of connection. Shelby, sensing the change in him, visibly relaxed, her tail beginning to wag hesitantly. In the weeks that followed, a different dance unfolded in front of the Byrne home. Tom started bringing snacks to Shelby, hidden in his uniform pocket. At first, it was just dog biscuits bought at the convenience store, but soon he was researching and preparing healthy homemade treats for his new friend. Shelby, in turn, waited patiently for him every morning, without barking, just with a hopeful tail wag. She learned to recognize the sound of Tom's truck and ran into the garden with anticipation, no longer in fear. Joshua Byrne, watching this transformation through the security cameras he had installed, felt his heart fill with gratitude and admiration. He saw how two beings, marked by fear and mistrust, found comfort and healing in each other. One day, Joshua decided it was time to thank Tom in person. He waited on the porch on Friday morning, watching the now familiar interaction between the garbage man and his dog. When Tom finished petting Shelby and turned to leave, Joshua called out to him. The conversation that followed was deep and moving. Tom, for the first time, shared the story of his childhood attack. Joshua, in turn, told Shelby's sad past and how she had come into his life. The stories they shared solidified an unlikely friendship between the garbage man, the dog, and his owner. Shelby's lives, but had a ripple effect on the community. The neighbors, who had previously watched the scene with apprehension, now smiled at the sight of the unusual friendship. Tom, once a solitary and reserved figure, began interacting more with the people on his route. His fear of dogs, although not completely dispelled, has diminished considerably. For Shelby, the change was equally profound. Her trust grew, not just with Tom, but with other people. She has become a joyful, welcoming presence in the neighborhood, a living symbol of how love and patience can heal even the deepest wounds. This story reminds us that sometimes our greatest fears can become bridges to our deepest connections. That courage is not in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to reach out despite it. And that, in the end, it is through understanding and kindness that we can truly heal and flourish.